All righty, here we go. It is a brand new Flyers Daily for the 24th of January, 2025. Flyers Daily, presented by Ticketmaster. Make more memories live. Flyers fall in another Metro Division matchup last night against the New York Rangers, 6-1. It stings a little bit because this Rangers team is actually one you're battling for wild card positioning with. But the Rangers just had a little bit more in that game last night than did the Flyers. 6-1 final. They have an empty netter and a late power play goal. But just felt like the Flyers never really had a firm grasp on grabbing the game to wrestle it away from the Rangers. Just again, Rangers just looked like they had more in the game than the Flyers did. Even though Flyers got off to a good start, Owen Tippett scores just a minute 25 in, beautifully executed 3-on-1 as Sam Harrison makes a big save in the Flyer zone and ends up in the left corner. Left corner. Well, left if you're leaving the zone corner for Owen Tippett. Gets his head up, gets his feet moving, makes a little area pass to Morgan Frost, who gets up the ice through the neutral zone, and then flips the strong side to Travis Konechny, who eventually centers it to a driving Owen Tippett. And he picks up the goal, puts the Flyers up 1-0. Then Braden Schneider scores at the 9-minute mark to tie it at 1. And then midway through the first period, Adam Edstrom with a high tip to make it 2-1. And that first period, after I believe at the 4.5-minute mark, Yegor Zamula didn't see another shift in the period, but he did come back. And I thought he responded pretty well in that second period after a couple of rough shifts in the first period. And I imagine the conversation in between those periods, that's probably not one of those peel the paint off the walls speeches from John Tortorella in between periods, or especially the message to Yegor Zamula. I think that's probably one where the assistant coach, Brad Shaw, pulls Zamula aside and says, hey, look, you didn't play the second half and change of that period, but the determination on your game tonight does not have to be made up already. You have time to turn this game around before we submit your final grade for the game, if you will. So go back out there, play fast, play with pace, play forward, get those details back in your game, and let's go. We still need you here. I imagine that's probably what took place. And I thought Zamula responded pretty darn well in the hockey game, the way he played for the remainder of it. Head to the second period, K'Andre Miller just reads a beautiful screen on this play from Vinny Trocheck, who just parks it right in front of Sam Ersson. But the thing that Trocheck does is he doesn't just get in front of Ersson and remain static. As the puck is moving through the zone, he's shuffling along with the play and the angle of the puck to make Ersson have to use the screen as a moving target, something you got to continue to look around because the screen's just not residing in one place. Look around it and track. You got to keep moving and looking around. And eventually, K'Andre Miller reads where he gets Ersson leaning enough and is able to beat him. So it's just a really good play. Again, it's not one where I would sit there and point a big foam finger at the goalie and say, you got to stop that. Now, it's just one of those ones where professional athletes making professional athlete type plays, just great execution. Then in the third period, Philip Cheadle gets the goal to put the Rangers up 4-1. Fox into the empty net, his third goal of the season. I can't believe he only has 3 goals this year. And then at 18:15, a late power play goal by Riley Smith rounds out the scoring. 6-1 is the final as the Rangers get the win. They grab the 2 points. But really all that matters here, like we harken back, let's go back to the game where the Flyers played against the Ducks at Wells Fargo Center. Perhaps you remember it was on January 11th. Cutter Gauthier came back to town. A very emotional building. Flyers won 6-0. But after that game, we talked about it. The only thing that mattered is what the Flyers took from that game to use going forward. Came out the next one. They had a come from behind win over the Cup champs 4-3 against Florida. Then they went on the road. They had a 3-2 shootout loss against Columbus. But then they win against the Islanders with a really good second period and losing Ryan Poehling in that game. Then they go out on the road and they beat the New Jersey Devils. Then they beat the Detroit Red Wings in overtime at home. Then you have last night the loss. This is a situation where you just don't want one to turn into 2. You don't want one loss to turn into 2 losses to then open up the opportunity for 2 losses to turn into 3. Frankly, they don't have the runway or the position in the standings to let that happen, to have that happen and survive it. To fight and claw and have this stretch of games where they got points in 6 straight games and went 5-0-1. to get back in it. Now you can't just have two losses or 3 losses in a row or go 0-2-1 in your next 3. Then you're right back where you started and you didn't make up any ground. So this is an opportunity tonight against the New York Islanders, who they just beat a couple of days ago, 5-3, in their building, to do it again, to go out and not let one turn into 2. I think this is a good situation coming out of that Ranger game. It's not a game that I'm freaking out over. I thought the Rangers played a good game. They've been playing really well of late. I thought the Flyers just didn't win a hockey game last night. It wasn't like it was a horrible effort or just compounded huge mistakes or anything like that. Nothing alarming. It's a loss in an 82-game schedule. But that loss can't affect tonight's game in the sense that 1 becomes 2. They're just not in the position for that to be able to happen in the standings. So that's the important element, I think, that we've got to take forward after that 6-1 loss against the Rangers last night. All right, real quick, I want to get to 2 things as well. One of the things I've been seeing a little bit on social media, and I've been on social media a little bit more of late. I'll be being laid up a little bit at times. But kind of the perception, I don't want to say the criticism, I'll say the perception of Cam York's game. I thought he had an incredible year last year. To me, he was the single greatest single player story of the season in his development, with showing how he can deal with players off the rush, his ability to block shots and his willingness to block shots, compete, and doing it all while being a very smooth player. I watched the thing the Flyers put out on the YouTube channel about Cam York on the road and being back home in Anaheim, and he mentioned, working with Scott Niedermayer, who I think there's similarities here. Now, Niedermayer was a great player, tons of accomplishment. York's not there. But there's a similarity in the way they approach the game. Scott Niedermayer, and watching him through many years, with many different teams, Anaheim, New Jersey, whatever, was a guy that never wasted energy. He was able to conserve it, to use it to its peak efficacy, its peak effectiveness. And there's a lot of that in Cam York's game, too. It's a very understated game. And sometimes I call this the Michael Schmidt syndrome. Michael Jack Schmidt. When you watch Mike Schmidt, and when he played here in Philadelphia, he received a lot of criticism because sometimes it didn't look like Mike Schmidt was busting it. Wasn't giving all that effort. Wasn't flying all over the place and ending up with a dirty uniform like Lenny Dykstra. But that was because Mike Schmidt was so talented that he made things look easier than they were. And there was a swagger and a confidence to him and a quiet demeanor. I think Cam York resembles that a lot. I'm not saying Cam York is what Mike Schmidt was to the Phillies in the 80s. Mike Schmidt's the greatest third baseman of all time. But I think sometimes we see Cam York and we see this smoothness and this calm demeanor and chill confidence / maybe arrogance to a degree. I don't think it's a bad arrogance, but we mistake that for a lack of competing. I thought last year put that to bed. And if you look at his advanced numbers, he's been really good this year again as well, as is Jamie Drysdale of late. So just seeing that, I think people sometimes go, I'd trade York in a heartbeat. And look, nobody's untouchable. And in the right deal, anybody's available, probably with the exception of Mishkov. But he's a player I really like a lot, can play heavy minutes because of that calm Michael Schmidt syndrome, Scott Niedermayer-esque approach to the game. And I think those guys are really important. I really do. Like yesterday, we had the Risto conundrum. Today, we got the Michael Schmidt syndrome in regards to Cam York. I don't think Yorkie would mind me comparing him to Mike Schmidt. Yorkie's a guy that knows his baseball as well. All right, now the last thing I want to get to, and this may seem off the beaten road because it's another thing I've seen a lot lately from some of the critics of the rebuild. And look, I saw some YouTube videos and some Twitter stuff on Danny Briere's press conference. And for the people that freak out after Danny Briere's press conference at the middle of a season, and because he says, yeah, I like my team. This is my team going forward right now. And the fact that you fall for this, pulling the chair out from under you before you sit on it, peanuts gag over and over again is ridiculous. Who gives a rat's behind what the GM says in a media session? It means nothing. No GM is going to go out there and say, no, I don't like my group. No, I don't think that guy's a part of the future. Because what does that do in your ability to make trades? Whether you do or you don't want a GM that goes out there and says, you know what? I don't think Morgan Frost is part of the future here. So I'm going to try and trade him. You ain't got GMs calling you with their worst offer. Like, come on. Stop falling for that old gag. Do not listen to what a GM says. Respond to what they do. Like, it's old of people having these faux outrage rants about, oh, the GM said he likes his team. He's supposedly in a rebuild. Like, come on, grow up. It's time to grow up. Okay, number one. Number two, one of the other things is, well, no players are going to want to come here. Nobody wants to come play in Philadelphia. The fans are too hard. The media is too hard. Nobody wants to come play here. They're not well thought of. Who would want to come here? Well, that's a defense mechanism of us living here. Nobody will love us. But it's just not true. Now, what I can tell you is, I know this for a fact. I don't know what the perception is of the Sixers ownership around the NBA. I don't follow it close enough, so I don't know, so I won't comment on it. But what I do know, because I do have friends and from my years doing sports radio that played for the Eagles and played in the NFL, and I know what they and other people around the NFL think of the Eagles and their ownership and playing in Philadelphia. They think it's effing great. They do. It's a first-class organization, run well, with stability, with a loyal fan base that cares. That's what players want. The Phillies are thought of the same way. Going back to when David Montgomery was still alive and now with John Middleton. They are highly thought of in baseball circles. And I don't mean baseball media members. I mean baseball players, baseball agents, families of baseball players. And those things matter. The Flyers are thought of in the same way as an organization, maybe that's lacked a little stability of late, but I have gotten back to that with Keith Jones and Danny Briere, and certainly Dan Hilferty leading the group. But this notion that, good players aren't going to want to come here, it's baloney. So I want to play this for you. This is Ben Simmons, who was a first-round draft pick in Philadelphia and received as much criticism as any athlete in the last 20 years in this city. Harsh criticism. This was his assessment and maybe his regret of the time he played in Philadelphia.
What are the things you kind of think about if you were to put like a capsule on it?
Like for me, going to a city like Philadelphia was like, I'm from Melbourne, Australia, went to Louisiana, like completely different places. Like the fans, like I didn't appreciate the fans enough. Like the fans of Philadelphia are incredible. Like you always want to play for a team that has a good fan base, whether they're booing or whatever. You just want fans to care. You want the arena packed. So just having that experience in Philadelphia was amazing. Like I'm so grateful to have played there and got to experience the city of Philly and know what it feels like to, play for a team like Philly and play in a winning team. Like winning in Philly is different, like there's no place like it.
I was at those games.
That place was it's just
good
insane.
Teams, good teams.
Yeah.
Like championship caliber teams.
Yeah, we had a chance to win a chip. So I think I'm just grateful to have that experience and know what it's like to, be a part of an organization in a city like Philadelphia.
There he is, Ben Simmons. He regrets not embracing the Philadelphia fans more. This guy caught a rash every day. Professional athletes are competitors. They want to compete, and they want to compete in front of people that care. This city cares. So the notion that players don't want to come here because the Flyers haven't been very good or ownership's not well thought of, or what players care about, number one, is money. If you have money to pay them, you're in the conversation. Number two is how their family and they will be taken care of on and off the ice. That's number two. Number three is loyalty. It's something that I don't think has bitten the Vegas Golden Knights yet, but will. You got to have loyalty. The Flyers have loyalty. You have to have great facilities. Flyers are going to be building a new stadium coming up in 2031. They have completely redone the downstairs and players areas of the Wells Fargo Center. Same thing at the practice facility. They spend more time at that practice facility than they do at Wells Fargo. Those things are important. Workout facilities, staff, nutrition staff, sports science, all of it, training staff, equipment staff. No penny is shaved here. Commitment, all those things. That's what means something to players, not narratives about, oh, the fans are too tough on them or the media drives players out of town. It's all total and complete BS. Total and complete. I've talked to so many former athletes that have played in this city about this. It's total BS. Are there some that happens to? Yeah. But they weren't wired for this city to begin with. And yet you do got to be wired a certain way. Sorry. And we're not very compromising, but that's okay. So I just wanted to play that for you from Ben Simmons. I thought it was pretty poignant. All right, everybody. Flyers, Islanders tonight. We'll break it down tomorrow. Join us then. Well, we won't break it down tomorrow. We'll actually break it down Monday with Bill Meltzer on a brand new Flyers Daily.